Hello, my name is Tara Ade. I am the Director of Prevention and Education here at Safe Haven, and I'm really excited to be able to put together this virtual training for Moms Demand Action. For some of you, I may be a familiar face. I've really enjoyed being able to meet with you all in person over the years to learn more about what you're focusing on and give you updates on what Safe Haven is doing. So of course, like many, mourning that void that we often have of being able to be in person with community, but also really excited that we can still make this happen virtually. For those that I am just meeting or you're just meeting me now, I'm so glad that you all have prioritized learning about domestic violence, especially during October because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I'll go ahead and jump in. I want to be mindful of not making this too long. On the screen right now, you'll see a photo of Safe Haven's brand new building. It is a little over a year and a half old. It is located on the corner of Saginaw and Birchcrest, which is kind of tucked behind where Breton and 28th Street are. It is a single site facility, so everything is now under one roof, including our shelter. It's actually a much safer building than previous models that we had used, like converting a home into a residential shelter, and we're able to make it safer because we truly built this building to meet the needs that we have around administrative needs, non-residential, and of course our shelter needs as well. I already introduced myself, but I will just put my contact information up on the screen as well so that you all are free to reach out to me if you have additional questions or thoughts about anything that I covered. And I welcome any sort of partnership opportunity that we might have. So today I'm just going to do a really brief overview of who Safe Haven is. I'll very briefly talk about some definitions and some behaviors that we commonly see in domestic violence relationships, and I'll also try to emphasize a few things that I think will be especially relevant to your focus at Moms Demand Action. So let's jump in. Safe Haven has kind of three different departments or three different key programs, two of which fall under this direct service umbrella. And so oftentimes domestic violence agencies are just known for their shelter, and while that definitely is a program that we do offer here at Safe Haven, we do much more than just our shelter program. We offer support groups. During COVID, those support groups have moved virtually. We do a lot of advocacy-based counseling, so working one-on-one with individuals in shelter and not in shelter to help them kind of goal set and process through what they have experienced. A lot of times we're validating and really just providing that emotional support that they might need. One thing I like to always emphasize too is that our services are not just targeted towards those that are ready to leave an abusive relationship. We work with folks that for a whole host of reasons aren't ready to leave or don't have intentions of leaving. We also work with folks that have been out of abusive relationships for a number of years, maybe even longer than that. But for whatever reason, something maybe comes up in their life and it kind of it brings back some of those feelings or fears or a whole host of things that they had experienced while they were in that abusive relationship, and they maybe just need some additional emotional support in that time in their life. Our services are offered in English and Spanish, and we also use interpretation and translation services to meet the other language needs that our clients may come to us with. Pre-COVID, we were really making this shift to be more community-based. So we have a lot of community partners where we offered services directly to clients in their respective buildings. That's not happening as much right now, but once we are kind of through COVID and COVID's behind us even more, we hope to be able to reinvigorate some of those partnerships and some of those services, because I think it helps to remove a lot of the barriers that clients might have around getting to our building or getting connected with one of our advocates. All of our services are completely free. They are completely confidential. We don't require any sort of identification. We don't bill. We don't even attempt to bill for our services. So literally somebody could just walk through our doors with just a name, and that's all that we would need. I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but we know that all communities experience domestic violence. And at the same time, we also recognize that historically oppressed communities experience domestic violence at higher rates, and there are additional barriers. And we want to do our best to remove as many of those or minimize those barriers as much as possible. So in particular, when we're working with refugee and immigrant populations, or we're working with folks that had to literally just leave and uproot their lives and maybe don't have all of those legal documents with them, we don't want to make that a barrier for them getting connected to support. So here's just a kind of quick overview of our services and how folks get connected. And so whether or not somebody's looking for shelter or they're looking to meet with an advocate one-on-one, there's all different ways that people can get connected with an advocate. They can literally just call our hotline. It is a 24/7 hotline. It's always staffed, weekends, holidays. And when they call, they will immediately speak with somebody that's trained to help provide emotional support, maybe do some crisis planning, some safety planning. Folks can also head over to our website where they can chat with us. We have a chat function on our website. Right now, we're monitoring that 8 to 5. Eventually, we'll have that available 24/7 as well. If somebody isn't monitoring that, they do get a notification that it's not currently being staffed. They can email us. We also do walk-ins. Those have been a little bit less advertised during COVID just to keep community members and our staff safe, but we are staffed. Our building has remained open and operational since the onset of COVID. And so if these other options don't work for somebody, absolutely come to our office. You can walk in and we will get you connected with some support in the immediacy and then help plan for how we can continue to offer support. The other thing that I want to talk about too in regards to this slide is that when somebody reaches out to us, it can be overwhelming. And so we recognize that, and we want folks to know that our goal isn't to solve everything in a single phone call or a single meeting. A lot of times that can feel really overwhelming for trauma survivors if we just jump right to, okay, how are we going to fix this problem? How are we going to, get you safe? And so just even if you're referring somebody, kind of easing some of that fear that might exist around like how this is such a big thing, a big shift in my life. How am I going to be able to do this? And just letting them know that we journey with survivors, we journey alongside them, and really try to do our best to make sure that we are empowering the decisions that they want and at a pace that they want. And so that's something that's really important. The other thing you'll see in this corner, the all are welcome, all are safe, is that Safe Haven is really trying to be intentional about creating an agency and a space where all survivors are welcomed, celebrated, and affirmed. And so that means, whether or not somebody identifies as LGBTQ, whether or not somebody does not identify as a woman, so we serve men and gender nonconforming individuals, and we really are upping our staff's training and capacity to be able to meet those needs and meet those needs in ways that are equitable. So yeah, let's keep on going. A lot of questions I get around shelter is who qualifies for shelter, how long can they stay, things like that. So like I mentioned, shelter is a service available to all survivors, not just female identified individuals. We have such a high need in Kent County and throughout the state of Michigan that we do unfortunately have to have some eligibility because we simply just don't have enough space to shelter every single request. And so we do base eligibility on what we consider immediate danger. And a lot of times, yes, that's looking at physical violence or the threat of physical violence, but it's not an absolute either. And so I want to caution that. But what we're really looking for is if somebody's trying to leave an abusive relationship or they've left an abusive relationship, is their life at risk? And there's a lot of different assessments that we do to help understand that risk, a lot of questions that we ask. I think as it pertains to the work that you all do and you all know so well is that access to firearms, meaning that somebody either has a firearm in their home or could quite quickly gain access to a firearm, is a really significant lethality risk. And so those are things that we're exploring with clients. Has somebody threatened you with a weapon before? What does that look like? How easily could somebody gain access to a firearm? And trying to understand some of those nuances to help us better understand if shelter is something that's needed. COVID has extended the length of stay that people are usually having in shelter, but on average, we try to set folks up for around a 60-day goal plan. So what are some of the things that you hope to achieve in the next 60 days? If that time comes and that safety risk is still present, we don't have hard and fast rules around how long somebody's allowed to stay. So we would reevaluate and reassess. The other program that we have at Safe Haven that I oversee is our prevention and education program. And we have a whole host of initiatives that we do. In fact, doing this training with you all is an extension of our prevention and education program. Some of the things that I want to just point out, because we don't have time to necessarily go over every single one of these programs, is more of a 10,000-foot overview of how we do prevention programming. And so one of the things that we try to emphasize when we do prevention or really focus on is we want to change the environment. We want to change the systems, the way organizations function, the way that our society functions, to create an environment that protects people from experiencing domestic violence and protects people from choosing violence. And so in all of the programming that we do, we use something called the social ecological model, and we use that for the lens and the base of how we do programming. So I'll give you just one simple example. Some of the work that we're doing with schools now, we've shifted from focusing heavily on education with youth in the classroom, and instead started to really work with schools. How do they change their policies? How do they change their procedures to create an environment where students know that violence will not be tolerated, where people that choose violence, they will be held accountable? And how do we create more equitable school policies that don't lead to condone or justify forms of aggression in any manner? Another program that we do that I'm really proud of, we just piloted it, started piloting it about a year ago, is our Gender Equity Reading Initiative. So that's a program where we use literature for a whole host of age groups, really like 3 to 18. And we're using different books and literature to help talk to people, talk to youth about themes and social norms that are really important to shape and understand in order to prevent violence. And so we have, I'll show you in a moment, a website there that has tons of activities and reading guides for youth or parents and caregivers to use. So that's a little snapshot of our prevention programming. If you'd like to know more, I would be happy to meet with you or talk with you about any of those initiatives. Really quickly, we talked a little bit about the heavy focus that Safe Haven has right now and will continue to have on creating a space where all survivors can be served. And that's a journey we're on, and it's something that I'm really proud of as we continue to do really good work to make sure that if somebody's experiencing domestic violence, they know that this is a place that they can go to receive not just care, but really good care that meets their needs. This is a lot of information on one slide, and so the one thing I just want to emphasize here is on the outside of this diagram, you'll really see a lot of what we consider to be our strong pillars, things that we try to ground ourselves in when we're doing this programming. So survivor-centered, that's respecting survivors' wishes and desires. It's putting them in charge of their life because oftentimes they have not had that autonomy. Prevention, we're doing lots of system changes, so that whether that's, educating community members or legislators or key community decision makers, we want to empower our community to really create a shift and accountability around preventing domestic and sexual violence. And then the last one I'll just kind of talk about for a second is partnership. We do not try to be everything in this community because we can't be. What we do try to do is create really meaningful partnerships and relationships with community organizations and leaders so that if there's something that we don't have the expertise to provide, we know with confidence who we can refer that person to. And we do that so that people are complex, right? It's not that somebody just comes in and says, hey, I'm a victim of domestic violence, and we say, all right, come into shelter and we all live happily ever after. Oftentimes, individuals are also struggling with things like a housing crisis, access to quality education, nutritious meals, a whole host of things, car trouble. I could keep going on, right? And so we can't solve all those issues, and we never would want to anyways. But where else can we, suggest somebody else get connected and do that in a really trauma-informed way so that folks really have all their needs met and addressed. So here's our empowerment model. It's how we do our work. It's kind of an extension of some of those pillars that I just talked about. The biggest thing is that we are walking alongside, not in front of somebody. We're helping them discover or rediscover their skills and their talent and their capacity to live independently of an abuser if that's the decision that they make. And helping them even navigate how to keep themselves safe if they do decide to stay in that relationship. But giving them their voice, not giving them their voice, allowing them to rediscover their voice so that they can live a healthy and safe life. This is a power and control wheel. You probably are very familiar with it. Safe Haven created their own based off of the Duluth model. And one of the things that we tried to do in this power and control wheel is really get a good snapshot of what we're currently seeing and some of those trends and behaviors that are common. So this might be a little bit hard to see. I'm happy to send out a graphic, a PDF of this if that's helpful. But you can always hit pause and just take a look at this a little bit in more detail. But you'll see that abusers use all of these different tactics to maintain power and control over their victim. Coercion is really evident in a lot of these tactics or behaviors. And I think the other central theme that I see, regardless of the type of behavior that somebody is experiencing, is fear. Fear of what might happen to them, fear of what might happen to their kids, fear of what might happen to, a whole host of things if they don't either kind of follow what their abuser is trying to get them to do, or if they try to leave and what might happen in that process. So yeah, just a really kind of broad overview of some of those behaviors. The definition that we use at Safe Haven for domestic violence is a pattern of learned behavior that somebody uses to maintain power and control over another individual. So it's a pattern. It's happening over and over again, and there's intentionality around if these certain behaviors are used or exhibited, it results in that victim losing power and the abuser gaining power. Another just quick reference sheet for you all as far as different domestic violence organizations in our community. Not sure if every one of you are coming from Kent County, so I thought I'd put some organizations from surrounding counties as well. And if you have any questions about any of these, definitely feel free to reach out to us. The last thing that I really want to emphasize here, and I know that you all have helped tremendously with this in the past through your drives. I actually remember a couple of years ago coming to Fountain Street where you all were meeting and filling my entire car with items that you all had gotten off of our wish list. And so thank you for that, and thank you for asking for us to share again what some of our needs are. And so I've put those all up there. We constantly are changing these. So if you go to our website, which is safehavenministries.org/wishlist, you'll always see our most up-to-date needs. You'll also be able to actually click to be sent over to the Amazon wish list. That is our preferred method right now. That way things are shipped directly to us, and we're reducing the amount of person-to-person contact we have to have during COVID. However, if you do get these items, you can bring them to our shelter. We'll have you leave them in our vestibule and then continue on with getting those after you leave the area. The final thing I will leave you with is just some additional resources to continue exploring this topic. As you'll see, some of these aren't specific just to domestic violence, but I believe it's very helpful in understanding kind of where the movement is at as far as preventing and intervening where domestic violence is, and just some important pieces that help us better understand why and how domestic violence ends up showing up in our communities. So I'll just pause for a sec for you to absorb everything that I have on the screen, and definitely the website there, gerigr.org. That's our Gender Equity Reading Initiative Program's website, and we have a ton more resources up there as well for you to engage in. So with that being said, I just want to thank you, especially if you've made it to the end of this video. I appreciate the work that you all are doing, and I look forward to time in the future where we can come together and collaborate and continue to work together some of our shared goals in the community. Thank you so much. Bye.